everybody. Hi. So we're going to take some time to tell some stories and talk about my dad. So I hope everyone's getting some burgers and stuff too we can eat while we're doing this. So I will start. In one of my last conversations with my dad, he told me to have a big party. I told him I want you to be there, and he said, I will be there. So I want to just thank everyone for being here and helping me fulfill his wishes. I want to thank my husband for breaking his back to make this happen, my sisters for coordinating with me, my sisters for always being there and helping me with whatever I ask for, or my kids for helping me with whatever I ask for. Aunt Judy for bringing 100 cannolis, Jason and Allison for all the sound and everything, and Damien, Barry, and the band. My dad is totally digging this. My dad was very witty and clever. Unfortunately, I didn't inherit any of that, so I'm going to speak from my heart and tell you a little bit about my life with me and my dad. My dad got off the boat as a merchant marine in Vietnam in 1969 and met my mom at a bar. Sorry. He was arrested that night for a warrant he had on an unpaid parking ticket. He said he got the ticket the day before leaving for Vietnam, so he just ripped it up and threw it away. Since he was arrested, my mom had to drive his car home, clinching a second date. They were soon married and had me in 1970. My mom was a wild child. When I was 3, she left us, unable to settle down and be a family. So at 26, my dad was a single dad with a 3-year-old. So from that point on, it was me and my dad. He stepped up and became the best dad a kid could ask for. He worked hard to take care of me. He bought us a house on Alena where our neighbors were friends we had dinner with nightly. He could have easily pawned me off on my grandma, but instead he took me everywhere. You're going to help me with this? Every weekend we played volleyball at Hartwell with his friends. We went to concerts like Linda Ronstadt, Jimmy Buffett, bluegrass festivals, Star Wars, private premieres, whale watching, Catalina trips, just to name a few. We had this poster of Linda Ronstadt in the kitchen, and I used to always tell him I really wanted her to be my mom. And he would always say, yeah, me too. The poster is actually in his kitchen right now if you want to check it out later. Then he met my stepmom, Pam. I know he was happy to finally give me a mom I needed, but the truth is I never needed a mom because he was enough. He taught me to sail and fish as he did all of his daughters. Once, it was just he and I out on a Yingling, a 21-foot sailboat, and while I was sailing, he jumped off the boat in the middle of the ocean. I quickly maneuvered the boat to get back to him. I was like, why did you do that? And he said I wanted to make sure you knew what to do. But literally, I was probably like 8 years old or something in the middle of the ocean. He was wild. My dad worked very hard his whole life, too hard. He wanted the best for his family. After marrying Pam, he had my sisters, Allison and April. I can remember him coming home from work after working night shift and watching my sisters all day, then catching a couple hours before he'd go back again. He didn't just sit them in front of the TV either. I can remember him blowing up swimming pools and playing with them. He always took care of us. He sacrificed for us, and he wanted the best for us. He had nicknames for all of us. He even carried it on to his grandkids. I was Amber Damber Dew, Amber Dew for short. Barry, please don't ever stop calling me that. Allison was Rosebud, and April was the Thunder Puppy. Atlas, his great-grandson, inherited that one too. As you can see, he's right there. And Haley, don't ever forget, Pop actually named you after Haley's comment. I could go on, and I hope to hear some great stories from others today. I am so grateful to have had such a special man as my father. To quote Jimmy Buffett, and though I cried, I was so proud to love a man so rare. He's somewhere on the ocean now, a place he ought to be. With one hand on the starboard rail, he's waving back at me. I love you, Dad. Keep sending me signs. Today we are going to be being so proud and party. He was a partier. He always told me he wanted a certain song to be played at his funeral, which Barry will play for us later. No? Oh, we're not playing it. We'll play it for you. So here's to Carl, our dad, our pop, our brother, and friend. The road goes on forever, but the party never ends. Aunt Judy. Don't trip.
I'm good. Well, as you know, I'm Carl's sister, or the princess, the brat, or Dupa Judah, whatever he wanted to call me. My brother Carl was born in Connecticut on July 10th, 1946. He loved the ocean and would often say it was because he was born on the ocean, or actually he was born before on the ocean because my mom would be 9 months pregnant and out there fishing with him in the tummy. Carl grew up around a large Polish and our Italian families who taught him the love of the sea, fishing, and playing cards for money, especially pinochle and cribbage. It didn't matter he was only 8 years old. He better bring his piggy bank to the game. It was dime a game, nickel a set. And our cousins, like Chucky and Susan, were more like brothers and sisters to us, as we were very close in age. Family gatherings were always a big party with lots of fish, crab, oysters, and sometimes yucky eels. That's where Carl, I think, started partying at a very young age. Carl went to Catholic school, and he hated every minute of it. Although smart, he gave the nuns a lot of grief, and he wasn't a stranger to the nuns' ruler. There he learned the accordion and Polish, but only speaking the dirty words as an adult. In 1960, the family moved to California, but unfortunately for Carl, he still had to attend Catholic school. He played football for St. Anthony's, but by his senior year, he convinced our parents to allow him to attend Wilson High School. There he met a few friends he had for life. You would often catch him hanging out with them at Lions Drag Strip, which was a car racing track in Wilmington. After graduation, college was not for Carl. On a whim, he went with a friend, tested, and was accepted to the California Maritime Academy, placing 40 out of 250 people selected. He attended for 1 year, then became a merchant seaman. During one trip to Vietnam, his ship was caught in a typhoon, and he seriously experienced the perfect storm. It was one of his 9 lives he survived and lived to tell about. Carl relocated to San Francisco, living in Haight-Ashbury in a commune, where he embraced being a hippie, and he carried it with him throughout his life. You can just imagine. Okay. You can just imagine what our dad thought when he brought home a pagan priest and some guy that only ate bugs and a girl named Lizard. Needless to say, they didn't stay with us. Carl wore many hats when it came to jobs. He was a logger in Oregon, worked aerospace for Pratt & Whitney, McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, and especially Howard Hughes on the Spruce Goose. He was very proud of that. He also worked at LA Water and Power, UCI, and probably a few more jobs that we're forgetting and we probably don't even really want to know about. But he always provided for his family. And no matter where Carl was, everyone liked or loved him. He was always reading, as you can see by the books, and he could converse with anyone on a variety of subjects. Carl had many loves in his life, but his 3 daughters gave him the most joy, Amber, Allison, and April. And he loved the families they created and added to his clan, including their animals. Carl lived simply, but didn't want for anything. He would give you the shirt off his back and the last dollar he had. And he donated to a variety of charities like Save the Bees and Butterflies, Sierra Club, Surf Riders, Doctors Without Borders. The list goes on. And Amber and Brian are going to get mail for the next 10 years asking for donations.
We could build another ADU with the donation mail he gets.
Carl valued simple things: a guitar, music, animals, a boat, the ocean, and above all, family and friends. We are so pleased that you could fulfill his request that upon his passing there be a big blowout party to celebrate a life well lived. We know he's watching, Thank you for coming.
I love you. I'm Courtney. All right, Courtney Lund. Look, you memorized it.
So I always thought it was super cool to get to know Carl over these last few years. I had a lot of really good conversations with him. We instantly bonded over sharing sea stories and talking about the ocean. He always, every time I walked into a room when he saw me, he'd say, "Have no fear, the Coast Guard's here." And we loved talking about that, and I thought it was so cool that his dad was also in the Coast Guard. Some of my favorite memories with Carl be me and him and Brian shutting down the bar in Hawaii. I don't know how many Mai Tais we had that night, but that was a pretty fun time. And then also one of the best memories, one day we were talking, I told him I had never been to a Jimmy Buffett concert. Before I knew it, he let me know that he had tickets and that him and I were going to Vegas. And so sure enough, we hopped on a plane and went to Vegas. Little did I know that Carl was a celebrity. All the Parrot Head parties and pool parties that we went to, I can't count the number of people that came up to him like, "Carl, where you been? I haven't seen you in years." And he seemed to know everybody at the party. And it took me to my first and only Jimmy Buffett concert, and that's a core memory that I'll never forget. Also, we had like one of the parties where he had to dress up, and he won a trophy for being one of the best dressed Parrot Heads. And it was super cool of him to introduce me to that world, and I'll always be grateful for that.
Is there anybody else that wants to come up and say anything? You're doing later, right? Okay. Chucky? Oh, yeah.
Okay. I probably don't need this. I have a big mouth. But I think most of you know, probably, what Carl's political perspective was. It was definitely very liberal. I think you would say libtard if you were the other side of the fence, in fact, these days. But indeed, I represent a political group he was involved in. There are several of us here. It's a national organization known as Daily Kos. And the reason Carl was well known, not only because he was there from the early days in like 2004, but it was because of his generosity. That guy was just amazing. He would hear about somebody whose feelings were hurt, or they were put out, or they'd lost their dog, or some such thing. And Carl was there, and he cared. And if they needed money, he was giving them money. And certainly everything that you were saying, Amber, about his contributions to things, and his sister was saying about contributions, same thing there. So that is the legacy that he left in this nationwide organization. Many of these people who never even met Carl. But the day that I posted the information when Amber got to me mentioning that Carl wasn't with us anymore, 350 people chimed in from all over the country to say how they were going to miss this guy, and I would say 300 of them had never even met him. But they knew who he was because they knew his heart and they knew his spirit. And that is with us all and always will be. Any of us who are still alive, who have Carl in our hearts, he's with us and going to stay there. So anyway, that was what I wanted to say. His generous spirit and his love is still going to be here. It didn't go anywhere. Okay, that's it.
April? No? Anybody else? This is my son, Harley.
Hello, everybody. I'm Harley, Pop's grandson. I would call him Pop, or oftentimes Carlito. I really didn't realize until later in life how much of an impact Pop had on me. He really instilled everything about who I am. I feel like me and him were twins in and out. He taught me a love for the sea. He taught me how to pour my first Captain and Coke, 5 count and a splash of Coke, for those of you that don't know. And the love for the Dodgers, obviously. I mean, we had many great times going to Dodger games, and we just clicked in every other way, and he was a great man, as all of you guys know, and we're going to miss him. So, well, we love you, Pop.
All right. Atlas, you want to talk? You say something about Pop?
Yeah.
What are you going to say?
Okay. Pop died when he was 77. I'm done.
Good job. All right. Is there anybody else? Oh.
You go ahead.
All right.
I'll hand it to you next. I'm also not great at these things, but Pop was just so special to our entire family, and he had such a sense of adventure, and he really appreciated that about our family, and he would always, like, he was on his reels all the time, you know, Instagram reels, and he would always send, like, me and Alex like to climb, he always send us climbing reels or things about, like, hiking or golden retrievers. He always knew everyone's personality and what they loved about life, and that was just who he was as a person. And he was always trying to get me to do some type of crazy stuff, like we were in Catalina and he wanted me to go parasailing with him at like 75 years old. He wanted me to go on one of those glider planes with him, which I wish I would have done in hindsight. But one really fond memory I have about Pop is we were in Catalina one year, and, you know, he was kind of getting on the older side, and it was harder for him to do things. But it was COVID times, and there was no shore boat to get to shore. We really wanted to get some buffalo milk, so we were like, let's just swim to shore. And he was like, all right, I'm going to do it. And I vividly remember he wanted to go out of the boat like a scuba diver, you know, when you, like, go backwards. And there's a video of my mom saying, don't go out like that, you're going to hit your head. And then he just goes plop and goes out backwards like a scuba diver. And he handled it like a champ. He swam all the way to shore. He was a little chilled because, like, he likes warm weather like my mom. But he was so happy that he did it, and he got his buffalo milk, and it just felt really good for him to be out in the ocean again. You know, he's a man of the sea, and just those moments like that are really just a telltale sign of, like, what an amazing man he was and how close he was with everyone in his family. So, yeah. Jill?
I'll try. Okay, I'm Jill, and I was with Carl for a couple of years, and he introduced me to Jimmy Buffett and the Parrot Head Club. And I remember Carl always saying, now I'm having a senior moment here, but it was, I've done a lot of things, but there's one thing I ain't never done, and that's I've never had too much fun. So, yeah, and so I can honestly say, during my time with Carl, I had a lot of fun. That was absolutely for sure. Thank
you. Thank you. Atlas forgot something.
Okay. Pop died when he was 77, and I'm so sad. I'm still happy because I'm drinking Coke. And I'm gonna swim in Aunt Jody's pool.
Okay.
I'm done.
All right. Where did Tristan go? He had something to say. Is there anybody else that wants to say anything? The band's gonna start soon. No? Okay. Huh? Oh. Do you want to talk?
No, I'm good. And I'm not telling your story. Some of our stories we have to keep ourselves. I grew up with the Dominellos many years ago, so this is Steve. I have lots of memories. Carl was it still is, my kids talked to me about it, I said,
Look at
and I
this.
just started listening, what he would wear, how
Look
he
if I
would
turn
talk,
this
what
off.
he looked like, what he believed in. He was the freest person that I've ever met still. My name is Brooke, and I lived across the street from the Dominellos. I'm a year younger than Judy, and we are best friends forever. But Judy said that her dad loved 3 girls like no other. But you were wrong. There were 5. He loved his mom like any son, good son would. And I just remember as a child thinking Carl was so different than Judy and different than me. But watching him around and taking care of his mom was a blessing. And he protected. If you know Judy is a very, very independent girl, has been since they probably put diapers on her. Cloth diapers back in the 50s. But her brother always had her back and always in his own way protected her, even though she probably told him not to, to know she was being protected. And that's one thing that I've taken away from Carl living his life, is that he loved his mom, his sister, and his children. Tell him we were on honor roll.
So Carl was 9 years older than me. So a lot of times when my parents would go out of town, he'd have to watch me. And Brooks was my best friend, so she would come spend the night, and he had responsibility for both of us. Plus, he also bought us our Strawberry Hill when they were out of town and we wanted to go out with our friends. Some of you know what Strawberry Hill was. So this one night, Carl's watching us. We're like 16. He's in the living room with his buddies, and we go to bed 11 o'clock, and about 2 in the morning, we hear, "Ee!" And we're like, what the hell is that? So we go into the living room, and there's Carl and his buddies, and they're watching the TV, and all that's on the TV is the dartboard with the Indian. And I'm like, Carl. Oh, and I should say that this is around the time of Charlie Manson. So I said, Carl, what are you doing? Oh, we're watching this really bitchin' Indian flick, and the Indians are kicking ass. And Brooks and I looked at each other like, run! So we ran to my room. We barricaded the door because we thought for sure they were going to kill us in the middle of the night because they were all flipping out in there. So that was the story. I won't tell them anymore. I have a lot, but I'm not going to tell anymore. If you want to tell more, it's up to you. But he was a great brother, and he really did take care of me. So, Barry, come on, one story. Barry Holman, one story. I don't give a shit. Get up here. One.
I have known Carl for 50-odd years, let's say, and I have CRS, so I can't remember shit. But we had a whole lot of fun, and we went on trips together back east with Jill, and we went to Ireland, and we went down to Cabo. We just had fun. All the Parrot Head functions too. It was just a blast. It was always fun. He's a good guy, and he still is, and oh yeah, we played poker all the time. And then there was tequila. And that's it.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, your attention for just a few more minutes before some great music is going to take us into the afternoon and into the night. Also, I am Carl's cousin, and we go back to our childhood, back in Meriden, Connecticut. And Carl and I were somewhat around the same age. I was a little older, and as they said, I should have known better, but I didn't. Neither did Carl. We got into so much trouble, particularly down at his grandparents' house, down in Westbrook, Connecticut, Mom and Pop. We had some great times down there, hiding things on the adults. and even at our young age, stealing some of the cups that weren't quite relinquished. And, as we moved out here, Carl was first, and I came out. I have some great memories. One of them is Carl and I shared a great mutual pleasure of music. Carl's music ability was vast. We could talk bands forever and ever, and the groups and what they evolved into. He was quite an aficionado. And something else that, well, I was a radio announcer out here in California on KHJ. And Carl would call in, we'd have these contests, and we'd give away albums and concert tickets. And Carl and I, we had a little cue as to when it was going to go in, because if you remember back, I could tell the story now because I'm retired. There's nothing they can do to me now. But he would call in. You have to be the 39th caller, and it's always so. I don't know how this happened. Carl was always the right caller. And so we built up a record collection with Carl. We got to see some great groups. And, he was, if there's a parrot head that could be put on his memorial, it would be Carl. He was, this guy here, Carl could be the original parrot head fans, because they knew everything about Jimmy Buffett. And as you can see by the tickets over there, so many tickets that they went to Jimmy Buffett concerts. Also, Carl and I, we shared our love of the Rolling Stones, and we went to a few concerts together. There's not much I could say that Atlas hasn't already said. I mean, what can you say after Atlas? But Carl was one of the smartest men you would ever find on the face of the earth. And I used to say, Carl, how come you know so much of this world events? Well, he said, when I was a guard for the Spruce Goose, that I used to read 4 newspapers a day. And his knowledge was legendary. I mean, he really had a vast knowledge of everything that was going on in the world, bar none. And, one other thing, I'm seeing so many people I haven't seen in a long time, and Allison, from the blue hair to the gray hair. My wife and I, we had a place down south of Palm Springs, and we're in our little restaurant there in this community, and out of nowhere comes, "Hi, Uncle Chuck," and there it is, and then, "What the hell are you doing here? We're on the Mexican border." But Carl would be so pleased that we have gotten together in group to celebrate his life. We're not celebrating his death, because you know what? Carl really hasn't died. Not really. He's not in our presence. But I want you to think of this. Carl was such a free spirit, and I noticed because both of us back in our younger days, we were the ultimate hippies. And, he is on every ring that comes across here today. He's in every raindrop that falls and nourishes the earth. Carl is with us. He surrounds us. We'll never forget him because Carl was a free spirit. Carl lived his life the way that he wanted to live. He was a great human being. And he had a soul. His soul was precious. And Carl's soul lives within his family, with his children, and with every single one of us here who is celebrating his spirit of life. So to everyone, raise your glasses high. And Carl, we will never forget you. We miss you. We love you. And we know that as you're looking down, you're so proud as to all of us here, celebrating your life here on earth. You have touched each and every one of us, and we are so grateful for that. And without further ado, with the music that was the life of Carl Dominello, may I proudly present this band that's going to play before you tonight, the Plywood Taxi. Let's hear a round of applause for the Plywood Taxi.